If you're suffering from chronic illness, it's most likely that you're overwhelmed by all these things that you think you should do to get better. Because there's just an endless list: diets, certain kinds of exercise, meditation, movement, different therapies you might be able to go into, journaling. Do I need to keep going? Because you've probably heard all these things before. And I'm an advocate of all those things because I do them myself. But sometimes all this just feels like another chore that you have to get to, another pressure. And imagine if your self care could feel like a gift instead, something that you look forward to, something that's nurturing and fun. And what I'm talking about is what's called therapeutic play. Now, this can be true for both children and adults. It has to do with how it's done. One of the best ways to play is to play in nature. And the reason for that is that nature offers many health benefits no matter what. So just being in nature is good for you. So imagine, how about playing in nature as well? And I want to give you an example of what that looks like from my own experience. So let's start for when I was a child. I grew up in the country in kind of southern rural Oregon. We had no television. We had very few toys. And what we had was lots of friends and lots of nature. So what would we do? We got creative. We climbed trees. We ran after critters. And our favorite activities was going to the river in the summer and swimming in the river. And so in Oregon during the summer in this area, it's really hot. So it's 100 degrees plus for 2 to 3 months during the summer. And you can imagine that our motivation is let's go to the river. And you'd have this group of kids. We'd walk there. It's only about a mile from the farm. And sometimes there's adults, sometimes there wasn't. And, so we'd walk there in anticipation of having some relief from the heat. But here's what that play looked like. First, we didn't just go swimming. You had to jump in, right? You had to make it more interesting. So the kids would find the highest point on some rock formation or a log nearby, and we'd jump in the river. And of course, the older kids who were braver would go first, and then us younger kids, because I was about in the middle, would try to keep up with them. So here's the elements. You have these rocks that you're climbing that are hot because they're dark, right? And it's 100 plus. So while you're climbing, you're like kind of burning your feet and hands. You're also trying to get your kind of footing because you're climbing. That's kind of scary too. And then the prize for getting on top of the rock is that you look down at this river and you're like, oh my God, this is high. And so you have this knot in your stomach and you're like, oh my, I don't know about this. And all the other kids are like, come on, come on. So you overcome that fear and jump. And of course, on the way down, your stomach's in your throat because falling is actually quite unnerving. You hit the water. The water is not heated. So there's a shock. And then the water goes up your nose. And then you come climbing out of the water, sputtering and coughing. And it's the funnest thing you've ever done. So isn't this interesting, right? Does that sound like fun? Well, on the surface, maybe it doesn't, but the experience in your body and in your spirit is of being uplifted and expanded. And why is that? Well, it's because you're challenging your capacities in the right environment at the right level. And this is what we all need to recover from any sort of stress, any sort of illness, is we need to continue kind of to expand our capacities as people and in our bodies in relationship to life. Now, technically speaking, this completely matches clinical recommendations for expanding one's capacity in the face of chronic stress. So here's the elements, or some of them. It's challenging, right? And it's uncomfortable. These are very important factors. Now, it's uncomfortable in many different ways. You're burning your hands. I mean, not burning like, skin peeling off, but it's hot. And the rocks are sharp and, you have to balance and it's kind of scary. And then you get up to the top where you're going to jump off and you're like, oh my goodness. And then you jump anyway. And then you hit the water. And then that your body has to adjust to that. And what you get from all of that, it's the successful completion of a challenge, is a huge dopamine hit, which of course completely changes your whole neurodynamics in your body. Because now you're someone that has strength, that has capacity, that has more to you than you thought originally. So this is the sort of thing I'm putting forth. And let me give you a few other examples. In some of my other videos, I have shown how I used cold exposure through the Wim Hof method to help me with my chronic anxiety, depression, and autoimmune disease. And it's helped me tremendously, more than anything else I've ever done for myself. That has helped me. And the gift of that practice, because most people say, what's the gift of getting in an ice bath? Well, here's the gift, is now I can go out to the ocean near my house in San Francisco, and I can swim in this ocean that most people would be absolutely unwilling to even consider, because it's either somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees, depending on the time of year. And the thing that's wonderful about it is now I can play as I used to as a child, as an adult, in nature again, which means going out into the surf, and the surf is like pounding at you, and it's hard to stand up, and it's cold, and but the thing is I get that same dopamine hit and that same feeling of expansion from doing that as I did as a child, and it's helped my chronic conditions tremendously. It's one of my favorite things to do to de-stress. And recently I had this most amazing experience as a result of that expanded capacity. As I was swimming on a beach, or on an ocean, in the surf on a beach in Point Reyes National Seashore, which is about an hour north of San Francisco, and it's this beautiful natural preserve. And I got out there, I was swimming around, and lo and behold, there's this harbor seal, and these really cute seals. And I think it was a young one because it was still pretty white, and I think they get darker as they get older. Now, I don't have any hair. I had these goggles on that are they're reflective, and they have kind of an orange tint. And I suspect that what happened is that harbor seal didn't know what I was. It was like, because it was very curious. Like, I remember when it first spotted me, it was probably about 100 feet away, and it kind of popped out of the water, and it kind of looked my direction and paused, and then it kept coming closer. So it would go in the water and pop up and pop up. So eventually it pops up about 10 feet from me, and I am completely thrilled. Like, I've never seen a harbor seal this close before. And then I just had this inclination to say hello. So I put my hand up and said, hi. And the harbor seal, the face was so hilarious, because it was like, oh, like this. Now, before it was just curious. It had that sort of curious look like this. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God. And then it swims away, and I don't see it again. And the thing that I think happened was that it didn't know I was human. And once it heard my voice, it realized that I wasn't a sea creature, and it took off. And, that is something I'm never going to forget. And it made me laugh. I mean, I laughed at the moment. I was just like, oh my God, this is so amusing. And then another example is, recently I was swimming at a different beach. Now, this beach is steep, and when it comes down to the ocean, that steepness creates a situation where it's a little difficult to get in and out of the surf, because the undertow is so dramatic, and also the waves crash in kind of at a steep angle. So I managed to get beyond the surf. I swam a little bit, and then I came back, and I'm like, okay, I got to get out of this surf. And it was hard, because the forces are both directions. You're being pushed towards the ocean. Pulled towards the ocean from the undertow, and pushed towards the beach from the waves, but they're contradictory. So here I was trying to time it, and I managed to time it. So I was actually on the sand with the undertow kind of fighting me, and I made a run for it. I got it. I think I can do this. And this big wave comes behind me and completely flattens me. And here I am, like, sputtering, and the sand goes up my shorts, and I'm like laughing, because it was hilarious. Like, that I had this challenge. I didn't make it, but there was no harm, right? And again, this is an experience of being more like a child in nature than a serious adult worried about, issues of your life, right? And the thing I love about these activities is that when you're in the intense cold, in my case, or you have these challenges, you forget about your life. You forget about your responsibilities. You're just in the moment trying to navigate this physical experience in nature. I find it unbelievably uplifting, and to me, it feels like a gift rather than a chore. So my challenge to you is think of what you could do in nature, and understand you might not have the resources I have, right? I have beaches, I have mountains nearby. It's easier, but still that pushes your capacity, creates discomfort, but not too much, right? So if you want to challenge yourself temperature wise, just do it a little. You don't have to dive into an ice bath like I do, not unless you're interested in that, but try to wear maybe a few less layers of clothing, and then have a physical challenge, and would be good too, like climbing something or hiking higher than you've ever hiked or something like that. And then also you want it to include hopefully a little bit of fear. So in other words, there's your capacity being stretched, right? You're like, oh, I don't know if I can make it to that mountaintop, to that hilltop, but this time you're going to push a little harder, and then there you go. But the most important thing is that it feels like a gift, that it's playful and there's curiosity there, because that's what's going to help bring your nervous system back to a place of healing. And also, you can feel like not your whole life is just a list of chores, including your self-care. So give it a try, and please comment below and let me know what you discover.